Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us today. Over this half hour, we'll be speaking with the chair of California's Board of Equalization. His name is Jerome Horton. Then we will be joined by Knabe, a member of the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County. And finally, the Chief of Police for Long Beach. But first, Chairman Horton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
I want to talk to you about marijuana if we can.
Sure.
As you know, two states in November, Washington and Colorado, passed the legalization of marijuana. Stunning development. California's a bit schizophrenic on marijuana. It passed the Compassionate Use Act in the 90s, but courts are striking down parts of it. And
California usually takes the lead in more progressive type stuff.
Yes.
So it's interesting that other states have passed it. Many folks in California are opposed to medical marijuana for a number of reasons. They see it as a gateway drug.
Right.
And then, of course, California is probably one of the largest producers of medical marijuana that's distributed all over the world.
Literally.
And so that presents a challenge for California from a legal perspective. And I think that's part of the concern and part of the challenge they had in passing it.
Right. But aside from the issue of Prop 215's passage in 1996, what we do know is that cities and counties are just bollocksed up about how to deal with these clinics that are popping up in their midst. I mean, there are about 2,000 clinics, I understand, statewide, maybe even more. Who really knows? That's the problem. Cities and counties are waiting for the California Supreme Court to rule.
Right.
But what's your sense of what cities and counties can do or should do at this stage?
Well, Brad, these are problems that we've faced before with liquor. We faced these problems before with gambling in the state of California, and we've already solved these problems. So what I believe is that the laws that applies to cigarettes, the laws that applies to liquor, and the laws that applies to gambling, as far as all the restrictions, all the enforcement, the tax schemes as well, they should also apply to cannabis, at least medical marijuana. It's very, very simple. I mean, a lot of people don't know that medical marijuana is currently taxable. It's subject to the sales tax, it's subject to the income tax, and arguably subject to the excise tax.
So let me ask you, when I buy a prescription, it's been prescribed by a doctor.
Yes.
I don't believe I get sales tax charged.
You don't, because the law specifically exempts the sale of medicine that is prescribed by a doctor and then dispensed by a licensed pharmacist.
Interesting.
Medical marijuana is not. That's the distinction, which makes it taxable.
Right. So are these clinics collecting sales tax on behalf of the state of California?
Many of the larger, more legitimate ones are. I mean, we've collected tens of millions of dollars in sales tax and the same on the income tax side, but there are a lot that aren't. And so we need to be able to bring that into control.
Which is interesting because you have always been one who's been looking to enforce the tax laws against legitimate and illegitimate businesses, for that matter.
Right.
Whether clinics are legitimate or illegitimate, the state says one thing, the feds say another.
Well, Brett, my primary focus is businesses that are operating illegally in the state of California, not collecting the taxes. Those are the ones that we want to go after.
The underground economy.
Well, the underground economy, and there's some that are above that are not paying their fair share.
But this is in this gray area.
Yeah.
And so are you sending out your agents, your enforcement agents, to make sure these clinics are collecting sales tax? I mean,
we are.
It's the law.
We are. Our agents are going out and they're doing the investigations and they're collecting taxes to make sure that there's a level playing field, that every California taxpayers don't have to subsidize the sale of marijuana. And at the same time, our enforcement helps the policing of the illegal activity, which is my concern. The illegal activity is something that we need to shut down.
What about the question of legalization?
Yes.
Because, look, Washington State legalizes it. President Barack Obama got fewer votes in a blue state like Washington than the passage of legalizing marijuana. Colorado, kind of a purple state. I mean, that state passed the legalization of marijuana. In 2010, California voted no on Prop 19. But is it time for us to really look at this question? Has prohibition failed?
Well, prohibition has failed, but that's not necessarily a reason to legalize the sale of marijuana. Still, the challenges of illegal marijuana and the negative impact that it can have on our society still exists. And until such time that we can assure the general public that they can be safe, that this is not going to perpetuate greater crime in their community, and it's not a gateway drug. It's going to be a challenge.
But my question is, couldn't one argue that if marijuana was truly legalized in California, and I'm not advocating, I'm just talking it through, although arguably it's been decriminalized to the point of a traffic ticket, but be that as it may, couldn't one argue that really does eliminate the criminal element? I mean, part of the problem is...
Brad, I think we're in a fortunate position, because if it does, let's do it. Let's put together a tax scheme, a regulatory process, and a control process that controls medical marijuana. And so we have an opportunity to do that with medical marijuana. One would argue that it's not working with medical marijuana.
Right.
There's a commingling of legal products. There's commingling with products that are not good for your health and so forth. So it's still a real challenge, and we need to fix it now.
The flip side is that the federal government, even the Obama administration, has seemed to signal that they are not supportive of medical marijuana schemes in various states. I'm not even sure if we know what they're going to do in Washington or Colorado, because that's the first time this has happened. Although Alaska, I think, kind of decriminalized it many years ago, but recriminalized. How does that interplay work criminally and then even tax-wise? I mean...
Well, I think the Obama administration has the same thing that the people that are opposing it. It is the fear. It is the fear of legalizing something, an individual driving down the street smoking marijuana and having an accident.
Although one could argue, and I'm not a doctor, but I have been told that if you're going to be inebriated in some form, alcohol is much more impairing than marijuana. I'm not suggesting either.
Well, equally dangerous, though, Brad.
Is that true? I had thought.
Well, you know, I mean,
you get stoned,
I don't smoke this stuff,
but you get stoned, you fall asleep.
I don't support it either, as far as it being legalized because of this challenge of this fear. Fix the fear, police it, regulate it. Have a scheme where it's accountable and the revenue is generated in order to address the issues of children, adults, and the medical problems.
So at this stage, are you waiting for the California Supreme Court ruling? Will that really change the whole tableau?
We're actually moving forward with legislation to establish the regulation. And what we believe, Brad, is that there's existing law. And all we have to do is modify existing law.
To do what exactly?
Existing law that covers the sale of liquor, the sale, the
like
interaction, cigarettes in the state of California, illegal gambling in the state of California. You simply enforce those laws against cannabis, medical marijuana.
Right now.
It's not happening now because there isn't a regulatory scheme in place from a statewide level.
So where do we go?
It exists in some counties now.
Right.
Some counties have gotten it right to some degree,
I mean,
but so many haven't.
Let's look at the largest city in California, Los Angeles. I mean, they have really struggled with trying to figure out how to deal with medical marijuana clinics.
But yet they still peripherate the Los Angeles County. And there's still criminals that are operating certain facilities in Los Angeles County.
So
that's the danger.
So talk to us about that legislation. You have a member sponsoring it
for you?
Sure,
Lou Correa, senator in Orange County.
That's a lot, a pretty moderate Dem.
Pretty moderate Dem. He's supporting the legislation, and we anticipate introducing it this year's session. And the legislation is really, really simple. It says the laws that applies to cigarettes, all the regulatory restrictive laws that applies to cigarette, alcohol and transporting and so forth, customs, it applies to medical marijuana as well.
What about in the Assembly? You have a sponsor there, or Lou's doing it?
We have a supporter on the Assembly side as well, Bucandera, who is the chair of the Revenue and Tax Committee on the Assembly side. And so, you move it, you know the drill.
The question is, with 2/3, do you even need 2/3 for any of this, or you just need a 50% plus one?
We don't. We just need 50% unless we somewhere along the line you change the taxing.
His name is Jerome Horton. He is the chair of California's Board of Equalization. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with Don Knabe. He is a supervisor in Los Angeles County. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're joined by Don Knabe. He is a supervisor in Los Angeles County. And of course, you are an arm of the state of California. And the governor recently introduced his budget for 2013-14. He says the California budget's in balance. Do you buy it?
Well, it's a balance if he takes all of our money.
Right, the county's money, which we know that he...
I mean, not just our county, but all the counties in the cities. I mean, obviously, we still have issues with the Prop 109, the transfer of prisoners. Right. Now they're talking about our realignment dollars to realign all these services. They may make a money grab there.
Right. I do want to talk to you about realignment. Okay. I think it's very important and it impacts Californians more than we realize. As you know, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the state of California to decrease its prison population. And the way that the governor has engaged in that, in part, is through sending lower-level offenders from state jail to county prison. Los Angeles, the largest county in the state of California, as a result, is impacted by that. What is your sense of how the county of Los Angeles has handled this influx of lower-level offenders?
Well, given the resources we have, I think we've done an adequate job. The problem's going to be long-term is, first of all, we don't have facilities to house prisoners for 5 years. I mean, so you just have to think through this process. The dollars have been significant. We've been reimbursed about $380 million. I think our costs are around $525.
Although there was good news, presumably, when Prop 30 passed in November. Part of Prop 30 wasn't just for education K-12, it was also to constitutionally guarantee realignment dollars.
Exactly. And the thing you always have to worry about that, and we supported that piece of it, the constitutional piece, the protection. But on the other hand, to make sure that they don't give you that money and then take money out of other pots. And that's what happens from time to time with the state. You know, the check's in the mail and they love us.
Right.
We still have hundreds of millions of dollars outstanding with the state that they owe us from back in the early 2000s. So the issue is ongoing. We've had positive conversation with the governor's people, but obviously, whether it be in-home supportive services or all the other entitlement programs that we have to operate, any degradation of those realignment dollars would be significant for us.
And I do want to ask you about those lower-level offenders that are being released from county supervision. What I understand is that for whatever reason, the judges in Los Angeles County are not imposing split sentences, meaning that a prisoner will be released and won't be on parole. And so the county, who is now meting out the parole, doesn't have any parole obligations. That may seem to save dollars, but we have these people out free from jail without a safety net.
Well, it's a twofold problem. One, you've got that issue to protect us from, having an even more burden. But the release of those into our system, from the state system into ours, I mean, first two phases. One, they're supposed to report to us, and they're not reporting. So that's a very labor-intensive operation to chase these people down, and that's really been a big buildup of cost. The other thing is, as you look at their jackets being their profile, what kind of mental health issues are they, what kind of drugs you take, whatever it may be. And so some of these are falling through the cracks, and it's had a very negative impact thus far on our communities, from carjackings to theft to, all kinds of issues that many of your mayors throughout the area are complaining about, and they've come to find be 109 people.
Well, but that's interesting because we have heard a lot of alleged Willie Horton moments where this person was released and they committed this heinous act. Allegedly, there was one in Northridge, and it wound up that it probably wasn't a, quote, AB 109 baby, if we can use that term. So many of us just want to get a sense, is realignment working, or is it a parade of horribles that has caused a spike in crime? I mean, crime isn't spiking, apparently. No,
and it's the non-nons, that we're talking about. I mean, it's the lower level crimes, but our nemesis in your neighborhoods when you have a string, of car burglaries, all those kinds of things, break-ins for drug money, whatever it may be. Hopefully it will work. We want it to work, and we're a partner in this, and we're not just turning our back and saying, well, look, we're not going to cooperate, because at the end of the day, they're coming into our system, they're coming into our neighborhoods, and so we have to do the best job possible to make sure that they follow the law. And so once we've been able to make contact with these folks, we've been able to do a pretty good job of watching them and keeping track of them, and that's not your problem. It's the people coming into the system that are not reporting until we find them. But they're sort of on the loose.
As I understand it, the judges need to put them on parole as part of their sentence. I mean, that's part of the issue.
That's part of the issue, but there's also just coming out of the system on that release that you talked about earlier into our system that are on parole, and that's another significant
I want to talk
piece.
about social services. You mentioned it briefly. We know that the, quote, safety net has been cut dramatically in the state of California as a result of the budget deficits. It appears that while this year's budget doesn't restore all that funding, there is a bit more money than last year, let's say, for social services, which ultimately is delivered by the counties. Is it enough?
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of what they expect us to do, it's never really enough. But, you know, that's been our goal. I mean, whatever pot of money we've been given, we try to live within the means of that. And we've been able to fight this storm with the cooperation of our unions and everything else, and not lay people off or furloughs or those kinds of things, and yet maintain the entitlement process that we're obligated by law to provide. And at the end of the day, look, I mean, that's our job. So we've been able to maintain services within an existing pot of money. It's good news this year that there are not any significant hits right now.
Right.
Obviously, they still have their deliberations to go through, but the bigger issue for us that comes right off our bottom lines is if the state or the governor make a grab for our realignment dollars. That would be hurt our city.
Can they under the Prop 30 language?
No, Prop 30 is one thing. That's a temporary sales tax. You have realignment dollars that are outside of Proposition 30 that are always that could be impacted.
Let me ask you about healthcare, because of course healthcare is a very significant piece of a county's budgetary pie. A lot of dollars coming from the feds, coming through the state, but we also know that federal healthcare reform is upon us, and California is participating in the Medicaid expansion. Is that right? Medicaid expansion. How does that impact counties?
Well, it impacts us dramatically. First of all, under the Affordable Care Act, you know, whether you're for it, whether you're against it, it's coming.
It's here.
So we have to be prepared, and that's been our modus operandi. And the issue that we're having is trying to transfer these people into our uninsured population, to the Medi-Cal population, that kind of, and this Medicaid expansion. It could be okay for us if the transfer of dollars makes it this way. But again, we have to change a culture. Part of the responsibility is ours in the sense that we are not going to be a competitor. We're going to be a competitor with Kaiser and every other hospital.
Bad?
No, I think it's great on the positive side of that. But if we're not a competitor in the right way, when they have a choice, at the end of the day, there will be some that's still maybe 1 million people that will be uninsured and don't have the ability to become insured under the new plan that will have to service, and truly the non-paying customer. And so we as a county have to change our culture to think that, you know, maybe we can't be all things to all people in every one of our medical facilities. We have to create centers of excellence.
But under the Obama healthcare reform plan, the number of uninsured should go down. I mean, that's the goal. And if
but
it does happen,
a 50% reduction, let's say from 2.5 million that we have now to 1.2 in this county to 1.25 million. That's a significant reduction, and that's good.
That's cost savings.
Okay, and that's cost saving. But of the 1.25 million that are now newly insured, if we don't capture some of that audience, then the 1.25 million, we're going to get 100% of those that are non-paying and non-insured, and they're going to come to us they don't have a choice. So we have to be able to compete for that 1.25 newly insured to get them into our facilities, whether it's our clinics, whether it's our emergency rooms, whatever it may be. And that's good for us. I mean, that's a significant culture change that I think is a very positive piece of this. But you still have a very significant number of uninsured, even with the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. You're still going to have a very significant, and we can't wind up just servicing those people because at the end of the day, it's just 100% to the bottom line.
His name is Don Knabe, member of the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Jim McDonnell. He is the police chief in Long Beach. We'll get his take on realignment. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition. Welcome back. I'm Brad Pomerance. You're watching Charter California Edition. Yes, we are now joined by the Chief of Police for Long Beach, Jim McDonnell. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to speak with you about crime in our midst, both in Long Beach, Los Angeles County, generally. Throughout this recession, we've actually seen a general decrease in crime rates, which has been counterintuitive in so many ways.
Right.
We spoke a while back about that. What do you see in terms of these trends of, there are some spikes, but the trending downward of crime during tough economic times?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think everybody would have anticipated that as the economy went south, that crime would go up. And we have not seen that either locally, regionally, or nationally. And there's a lot of people scratching their head. There's a lot of people taking credit while they can for it.
Of course.
But really, it's, it's overall, I'd say, still a big question mark. Although I think the way we're policing today is a big improvement over some years ago, much more strategic policing.
Is it more high-tech? Is it community policing? What is it that seems to be the golden ticket?
Well, I think it's kind of a hybrid policing, if you will. It's trying to use the analytics that we have available to us to be able to drill down and see day of week, time of day, and then seasonally, what are we seeing? When the school starts up, we see an increase in gang activity. Different times throughout the year before Christmas, we see some other trends. Looking at that, analyzing it, and then making sense out of it, so we guide our deployment by that. I think technology has been a big factor as well, whether it's video surveillance or some of the other many tools that we use to be able to try and be everywhere with fewer people. And I think the community policing part still needs to be further developed, but the value of that can't be overstated.
I want to talk about last year specifically, 2012. In LA City, for example, crime was down overall, violent crime down overall. In Long Beach, violent crime down overall. Murders were up, though, a bit in Long Beach. What do you think happened there? In LA, I think it was also up slightly. So why are we seeing these slight upticks in murders?
Yeah, and to get to the nitty gritty, it's hard to explain. Each individual one is based on its own merit. We're looking at the difference between 25 and 30. So we're looking at, by comparison to the sheriffs or to the LAPD, relatively small numbers. What we were proud to be able to finish the year out with, I've talked before about our deployment issues based on the budget. We're down dramatically from where we were a couple of years ago as far as police officer deployment. So we have fewer officers. We have to be more strategic with their deployment, and we've done that. And we focused heavily on the gang problem we have in the city because that drives our violent crime numbers.
Of course.
So we ended up 2012 overall with a decrease in violent crime to the lowest level since 1972.
Stunning.
Yeah, which is really, I think, a credit to the men and women out there doing it, as well as the partnerships we have with our communities.
Let's talk about property crime, which in some ways can be so violative. In the city of Los Angeles, we see decreases in property crimes in the LA County areas, some upticks in property crimes. In Long Beach, we see some upticks in property crime. What's happening there? Is it the economy that's starting to hurt a little bit, and so people are turning
I think there's a number of things. Yeah, I think that, well, to compare us to LA right now, I think it's apples and oranges when you look at it. LA is at the highest number of officers they've ever had. They're over 10,000, and they just celebrated that this past couple of weeks. We're not as fortunate in that regard. So we have deployment issues where we do have to be more strategic. When we focus on violent crime, it somewhat pulls resources away from the focus on property crime. We have the realignment picture then, where you look at, you hear the three nons.
Sexual, violent, and gang.
And they don't, when they say gang, they mean prison gang. They don't count street gang. So you have a number of people who are coming out of the prison system and now under the monitoring rather than parole, being monitored by county probation. Which has a challenge in itself.
Can we talk about that briefly? I want to get back to property crimes in a moment. I learned recently that part of the issue is this question of parole. Not probation, but parole. When you get released from prison, or I should say county jail. Under the state system, almost uniformly, once you were released from state jail, you were still on parole and there was monitoring. In LA County, for whatever reason, we're not seeing what's called split sentencing. And so in this county, folks who are the three nons going to county jail, they're getting released, but there's no more supervision. When there could be,
Right.
if the judge or the DA would ask for split sentencing or provide split sentencing?
Right.
What's happening?
Right. Well, it becomes, when you look at it, it's a resource issue. For those who haven't been paying that close attention to what's happened with the state, due to the budget crisis, has decreased dramatically the number of people who work the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Right. Part of that is the parole piece. So as we have the AB 109 and the 3 nons, if you will, and they're coming out of the system, if they reoffend, normally in days prior, their parole would have been violated,
right.
and they would go back to state prison. They're no longer under that same set of guidelines. So if they reoffend now, they go to county jail rather than back to state prison. So you've got now a system where the supervision and monitoring is being done by county probation.
But why can't we have more supervision once they are released,
right.
in terms of parole? I mean, I'm a novice here. I'm just learning.
No.
But it does seem as if LA County, look, I know you're not the Lee Baca, you're not the county sheriff, and even if you were, I don't know that he could demand split sentencing, but it does seem as if there's a gap here.
Right. Yeah, no, I think we need to work more with our judicial partners.
Right.
I think also we need to educate the public as to what the reality is to the resources we have available. The prison system, as much as we'd like to be able to go back to the way it was to some degree,
will not happen.
It will not happen. And when you look at the reasons for what happened, part of it was budget driven, part of it was the 3-judge panel in the Coleman-Plata lawsuit that talked about overcrowding.
You're talking about what went to the Supreme Court,
right,
the U.S. Supreme
right.
Court.
The Supreme Court upheld it and called for the release of a large quantity of the inmates there.
California was literally directed to decrease its prison population.
Right.
By, I think it was 50, 60,000.
40,000, yeah, 43,000.
43,000. Yeah, you're right. That's a huge number.
Right.
And as we stand today, we may not hit those targets.
Right.
And the governor is asking to allow some leeway on that. I think we may miss it by about 10,000, 9,000.
Yeah.
We don't know what the panel will say.
Right.
So we could see a release, but be that as it may. Let's go back to property crime, because there were some upticks in Long Beach, and I presume it wouldn't just be Long Beach, that were a bit surprising and somewhat troubling. Garage burglaries up almost 50% year to date. Petty thefts up almost 20% year to date.
Right.
What's happening there?
Well, I think some of that is attributable, to the economy. You have people out there, and it's hitting them, and they're doing what they do to be able to get a free whatever it is.
Right.
I think part of it too is when we look at the 3 nons, you have people who aren't currently in for a violent crime, who aren't a member of a prison gang, or the current crime they're in is a non-sex crime.
Right.
Many of those are narcotics offenders or involved in property crime.
Right.
When those people are released from the system back onto the street, you can anticipate that you're going to start to see those crimes start to uptick again.
Do you think that's what's happened here?
I think partially. I think that there's a number of different factors that weigh into any of the upticks we do see. Part of it is the number of officers we have available. Part of it is our focus on violent crime. Part of it is the AB 109 issue,
realignment,
and then the economy.
What can we do to protect ourselves from these petty crimes, garage burglary, petty theft?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is paying attention to what opportunity you're affording somebody who's looking to get over. We have probably 40% of our burglaries are unlocked, either cars or unlocked doors or windows. We have to, all of us, be more.
It's that simple.
Be less complacent.
Right.
Be more,
it's that simple.
Be more attentive to saying, am I creating an opportunity for someone that I don't want to create? And taking that extra minute or extra seconds, if you get out of a car and you're leaving something, you're only going for a quick cup of coffee, don't leave something visible on the seat, in the car, put it in the trunk. If it's something valuable, don't put it in the trunk at the scene that you're going in, because they know it's there.
Of course.
Put it in there beforehand so that you don't create that opportunity.
His name is Jim McDonnell. He is the Chief of Police for the City of Long Beach. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.